All right, YouTube time. So what I wanted to talk about today was blocking. Why blocking is actually good. And you might be saying, hey, Brian F, blocking does no damage. Hey, Brian F, I always match 3 frame on wake up. Why would I ever block? Or you might say, hey, Brian F, blocking is a social construct invented by top players to keep scrubs like me down. I'm going to mash every time and you can't stop me. And sure, you can believe all those things, but I wanted to take a little bit of time to break down the obvious. And I think obvious topics are actually very important to talk about in fighting games. There's a lot of stuff that a lot of the mid-level players and high-level players assume people know. If I went and asked you, why should you block? Could you explicitly tell me why you should block? Can you actually break down what's happening in the game for why blocking is good? Why should you actually block? I actually want to answer that question. As obvious as it may seem, it is not actually that obvious. Blocking is the act of holding back or down back in order to block the opponent's move. If you block in this game, you don't take damage. In Street Fighter V, the vast majority of things hit mid. You can just hold back and block it. Now there's a few things that are lows, typically your crouching kick moves or your obvious examples, where if you hold back, you're gonna get hit. You need to block your toes by holding down back. That's blocking, okay? The cool thing about blocking is if you block, you don't take actual damage. You can take gray damage, which happens when you block medium or heavy moves. Lights don't give any gray damage, but block too many mediums, block too many heavies, this gray damage adds up. This is recoverable damage that recovers over time. Let me put the life bar real quick on, not auto recover, but normal. I built up some gray damage here by getting a bunch of mediums on block, but if time passes where there's no pressure and you're not blocking anything anymore, eventually that damage will recover. So obviously you're very incentivized to pressure people while they're blocking, and you're incentivized to get in a situation where you don't have to block anymore. But keep in mind the alternative, blocking is better than getting smacked, because if you just get smacked, you take real damage. That will not come back. We don't have any healing in this game. This damage is gone. The other idea is in Street Fighter V and 95% of situations, you can react block to any move if you're committing to blocking. 90% of the moves in the game are going to be hitting you where you can hold down back. So down back actually blocks lows and blocks mid attacks. It only loses if I do an overhead. So I have guard all on. So you see the dummy, he's standing up to block this. You can't block this move crouching. This is the only move I have that will beat you on the ground for blocking low. If you think about it, you could actually hold down back and then just react to this and block this, right? You actually could block everything. Street Fighter games in general are not about unreactable 50-50s. There are certain situations to set them up, but it's not the default. But generally, the overheads in Street Fighter V are reactable and the mids are reactable. You might get hit by super fast moves that cover neutral. The reason these kind of moves hit you like EX dash straight is because you're trying to walk and build space. But if you commit to blocking, you can block everything. So what does blocking lose to? Obviously, the grab. This is what makes the game work. This is what makes Street Fighter games tick, is the fact that blocking loses to grab. So you can't block forever. But grabs have a limited range. They only work in certain situations, and you can tech them. The other thing is command grabs. I'm not going to go into the command grabs. That kind of blows all this out of the water. But there's only a few types of moves in this game that force you to come out of a blocking situation. Otherwise, blocking beats everything, right? You got to have rock, paper, and scissors. Otherwise, the game is solved. That said, why is blocking bad? Well, blocking is bad because a lot of situations people can do things where you can't react to it and set up a lot of throws, and throws add up over time. And blocking doesn't always get you out of the immediate situation, but it is better than the alternative of getting shimmied or getting blown up for trying to take a throw in a lot of situations. You might be saying, okay, Brian, that's great, but if I block forever, I'm not going to do any damage. What is the point in blocking? Why should I block? Why is it actually good? So besides the obvious that it technically stops or prevents like 95% of the moves in the game from doing anything, let me show you why blocking is good and how you need to think about blocking. I'm going to show a few strings here and I'll explain them. Here's one common string from Balrog, right? Heavy kick through crouching medium punch. So here's the idea with this heavy kick. If I block this heavy kick, you might be tempted to press a button after, but you get hit. Because this heavy kick is plus on block, meaning the person who pressed the heavy kick, if you force someone to block it, you get to move first. Because of this, if I block this move, if you mash your fastest 3 frame, it will beat you clean. That stinks, right? But pay attention to what's going on in this situation after I block. Look where Balrog is left. If I block both these moves, I'm still -2 if you look at the frame advantage indicators. After blocking crouching medium punch, the person doing crouching medium punch is at advantage, +2 frames. But look at the spacing. If I'm here, what do I do now? Look at the range I'm at. I'm plus But what am I gonna do? I'm only +2, so it's not like I have all the time in the world. I can hit them with a slightly faster button, but I can't hit them with any of my mediums, not even heavy kick reaches. I can do sweep. That'll reach. It's 8 frames, it's not the fastest move, but it'll reach. Or I can do something like standing heavy punch. So standing heavy punch, I much prefer, because if they block this move, it's still safe on block. I probably wouldn't go to sweep here. So this is the one move I have, besides crouching heavy kick, that can keep hitting the opponent at this distance without moving. The issue with this is that heavy punch is pretty slow. There's a big gap there. There's a really juicy gap there. So, because I blocked the first 2 hits of this sequence, even though my dude is plus, there's nothing he can really do that's airtight anymore. 1 button, 2 button, now I'm at this distance. Moves on block keep pushing you away. They keep creating space between you and the opponent. Moves have pushback on block, which prevents infinite block strings, right? If I was plus here forever, I can just mash jab indefinitely and you would literally never get out. But you see how you start moonwalking backwards while mashing jab. Pushback is the reward for you blocking. Even though I'm +2 here, what can I do that's airtight? I'm gonna have to do something to overextend and leave a gap in order to keep pressuring you. If I'm on offense here and you block this, it's like, oh great, what do I do now? Do I walk and block? Or do I walk and maybe stagger a heavy kick? That's a pretty common sequence, right? Because this has pretty good range. I still have to take a step forward. I still have to inch forward. I technically could have gotten smacked there. Do I just give up and go back to neutral? I have to commit to an option right now. I have to do something which leaves a gap. Blocking forces your opponent to leave gaps or overextend. I can start pressuring now. Now I can build my own space. And this is the mind game of Street Fighter V, is knowing like what they're gonna do in this situation. You can obviously beat stuff like this, right? I can instead commit to just burning resources to keep the pressure going. I can burn meter to get plus frames or do some kind of special move, but I'm gonna have to do something. If I just do normal block strings, I'm gonna get pushed out eventually. And then I'm gonna have to overextend, walk, kind of play around with your button timing at that point. So when you block, you establish the mind game of, hey, you're gonna have to actually walk up and stagger. So that's why people do stagger pressure. Like normally when I do heavy kick, I don't do this sequence. This is the most airtight sequence, but generally your pressure is over. If I do heavy kick, a lot of times I walk up and heavy kick again, because they're gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna respect the pressure. If you start respecting that one situation after heavy kick, I'm gonna start doing this. Squeezing 2 heavy kicks, right? And because of that, I'm blocking, now I'm eating more gray damage, and I'm getting smacked around a bit more. But I can still challenge here. There's actually a gap here. If I block enough, I can establish these mind games where it's like, hey, I blocked in this situation so many times. For you to get anything worthwhile, you're gonna have to keep trying to crack my defense. And once you block enough, then you start mashing. Do you get what's going on here? Blocking makes your mashing more powerful. If they want to keep it airtight, go right ahead, man. Keep it airtight, spend all your resources, but you won't get any pressure after, right? There's a great sequence. Right? Kind of frame traps me there, lets me combo. If I block at any point after the jab, I start pressing buttons, it's not really gonna work out. But if I block it out, look where we are. We're in neutral. Nothing's gonna hit here. I'm still at a disadvantage because I'm in the corner, so I can't adjust my spacing by walking back. But I blocked it out. Now next time he does that, instead of doing that full sequence, this might be how he plays it now. And you know what? All of this loses to mashing. Because I can use my blocking habits to establish the mind game that I'm not going to crack, I can then know when to challenge more. The grab is what gets you? Yeah, the grab will get you. But if you take this throw, often you're in a situation where you can go back to this mind game again. This is the offense and defense mind game of Street Fighter V. And this is why blocking is actually good, because it forces people to overextend, which lets you then build space and check them, and then you get to start applying your pressure. When I play people who don't ever block, it looks like this. I just rinse and repeat the airtight pressure. I don't have to think anymore. If you never block, I literally don't have to think anymore. Blocking is what slows that roll down. If you block enough, I have to throw. And if I throw you, the pressure after is usually less than the block string. Obviously, in the corner, you're not in a great position, which is why blocking and taking the throw mid-screen is even more powerful. But blocking forces me to mix it up. If I throw you here and you block, that's kind of all I get. I have to do something like this, dash, which is technically negative. I'm not saying this is an easy situation to deal with. It's definitely offense advantage, and I dash here all the time. But I'm gonna have to start doing stuff that actually involves at least a little bit of risk, right? So you're blocking, and then that forces me to do dash up to maybe throw you again. Now you wake up buttons. Now it hits me. You need to block to establish the mind game. Blocking buttons, blocking block strings creates space. The space alleviates pressure. The opponent will have to extend themselves and potentially overextend themselves to get back in to keep applying pressure, or accept that the pressure is over and go back to neutral, where you guys are both on equal footing. So blocking makes it all tick. Blocking will make your mashing better. Blocking will make your defense better. Blocking will confuse your opponents. Really, when people say they're always mashing, it's actually because they block and mash at a good ratio. When people complain about mashers, a lot of the time it's because they block like 60% of the time and then they mash 40% of the time. It's usually not all or nothing. It's very rare is it a situation where you are literally just mashing every single wake up. That very rarely happens, because when that happens, it's a wash. So blocking makes your mashing better. Apply it. And that's why blocking is actually good. I don't know if people actually talk about it, because people are scared to block. They say it does no damage. Block enough, you'll get more damage. And then learn how the spacing increases in block strings. I know it seems obvious at first, but these are the things that people don't talk about that often. So blocking is good. Knowing when to block is better, and knowing when to mash will take it to the next level. That's all I got. But listen, before I go, I wanted to talk about this crazy mix-up. It's like one of the craziest 50-50s that I've seen. 50% of my viewers are not subscribed. It's a pure 50-50 if you're subscribed or not. So that's a crazy mix-up. So maybe we can make that more one-sided, maybe make it like a 70-30 situation so we don't get set played over and over here. If you're a viewer here, you already watched the video, you learned something, maybe consider subscribing to help make this 50-50 less dangerous. All right, did you get hit? I got hit. I get hit every time. All right, that's all I got. That's it. Thanks for watching. Peace.